Hello and welcome to everything that you wanted to know about self-leadership but were afraid to ask. This is episode 6, and in this episode I want to talk about self-efficacy. So I guess the first place to begin is, what is self-efficacy? There are many different versions of, or interpretations I guess you should say, of what that actually means. But self-efficacy in its most basic form is a belief. It's a belief that we can make a difference. We can impact our environment. We have a sense of causal agency, which means that we have a feeling that we can cause things to happen. We feel empowered, we have that agency, we can cause things to happen in our environment. We can shape it, we can change it, we can influence events directly. And so self-efficacy is that belief. It's a belief about causal agency, in my opinion. Now, you may then be thinking, well, what is that got to do with self-leadership? And I would suggest an awful lot. If we want to plot our course through life, whether that's the holiday that we want, whether it's the job, whether it's the career, the relationships, the car, whatever, the fitness level, we have to have a sense that we can do that, we can make a difference. And self-efficacy can show up in many different areas of our lives. Relationships, as I mentioned, health, fitness, career, promotion. And imagine it the other way around. Imagine that someone did not have this self-efficacy, this sense of agency, that we could make that difference. Then we'd look around and just presume that things happen to us. We wouldn't take control. We would be unlikely to set a goal and go for it, because we've no belief that we can plot that course and overcome obstacles. Confidence is in the mix as well, you see. If we believe that we can do those things out there, there's a sense of confidence about our competence. So we have an element, not overconfidence and not delusion, we have an element of confidence that we are able to do these things, and therefore we're confident about our competence, if that makes any sense. And another way to think about this idea of self-efficacy is to consider what's called the locus of control. So the locus of control can be internal or external. Now, an internal locus of control means that we believe we can impact things in our environment, that we have more say in the reality around us, in those situations, those things, those events that will come up. And also we have confidence that, I would suggest we likely have confidence that who we are right now in life is as a result of what we've been doing. So an internal locus of control is associated, it is similar to self-efficacy and a sense of agency, self-agency. An external locus of control implies that we believe we can't do much, that most of what has happened to us so far, most of what is happening, will happen, is not in our control. It is a series of events, situations, what people did, the happenstance, chance, that stuff just happens to us. And we're basically buffeted along by the vagaries of life. And that external locus of control isn't healthy. Now, of course, we've got to be careful. I mentioned delusion. We don't want to step into that stuff or trip into that area. We've got to be careful that we ground things in an element of reality, of probability, of possibility. One could argue impossibility, and I'll come on to that in a second. But what I mean is that if we have a sense of this agency, of an internal locus of control, then we believe that we can impact those things in our lives. We believe that we can set a goal and we can head towards that goal, probably very often in smaller steps. We believe that we are competent enough. We have confidence in our competence. Now, I mentioned impossible. This is where it gets interesting. If you considered for a second someone who has this belief that everything just happens to them, this external locus of control, no confidence in competence, then they as often as not need help. They will tend to flounder. They need someone to listen to them. They need someone to try and define where they might want to head, to build their confidence up. Someone who has this external locus, this confidence, this competence, is also beginning to push at the boundaries of what is possible. And someone who has that confidence, well, let's just take an example. If we decide to set a goal that is a stretch, but it excites us and we're passionate about it, then if we have the confidence we can get there, then that can help. But how would we ensure that it wasn't delusional? Well, one strategy I've talked about before is to look around and figure out who has done that, or, as is often the case, if the goal is unique, something like it, and listen to them if you possibly can. Read, listen, watch, observe, meet, if at all possible, have a conversation, and glean from them how they did certain things, what their mindset was, and indeed, if you can, glean from them their opinion on what you're talking about, your goal. What you should not do, in my opinion, is seek the counsel of those who have not done such a thing, or those who tend to have an external locus of control. Because you see, that can trip us up. It can cause us to restrict, diminish our adventure in life and where we want to get to and how we want to get there. So we've got to be careful. It's better to speak to people who've done it. Now, the point about it being impossible is this. We can consider things to be impossible depending on who we speak to. Or if we talk to possibility thinkers, if we talk to people who have done things or done similar things, who've overcome the odds, who've created some routine that allows them to squeeze as much out of the day, let's say, and to continuously be striving towards their goal, to overcome obstacles that others did not think could be overcome, then in that sense, we can achieve the impossible. The impossible, of course, according to whom? The impossible, yes, if it's someone with an external locus of control. The impossible for someone who's done certain things in life, who has a confidence, who has an internal locus of control, a sense of self-efficacy. No, probably not. And if it is impossible, if that's what we figure out in conversation with those people, or indeed along the way, then it's highly likely that it will be impossible. But it's amazing how many things actually aren't when the mindset, the motivation, the discipline is there. And so, what can we do then to help ourselves either refine or improve or even generate that sense of self-efficacy? I would suggest starting with something really simple, writing down a list of those things that you would consider to be outside of your control, because of course some things are in the world, naturally, and then write a list of those things that you would consider to be inside your sphere of influence, control. And I would also suggest, if you possibly can, sitting down with a friend or two, maybe this is more than one conversation, and get them to consider those things that you say are inside your control, and to critique it nicely, but to critique it. Check for any delusional thinking, but also check, I think, importantly, for those things that you have not put in, that maybe you've not included. And check also for those things that if you haven't included them, that maybe other things that are connected to them you should also include. And that friend can have you look at those things that you consider to be outside of your control. Maybe you need to put more things outside of your control. Maybe you need to move things from one column or list to another. But that sense of checking can be really, really, really useful, because as often as not, you will find that there are more things in your control than you realize. Partly because they're staring you right in the face, but you've got into some habitual thinking. You may be in a sort of limited mindset rather than a growth mindset, rather than broaden and build, rather than seeing everything as a challenge, as an opportunity, rather than listening to the internal dialogue or voice that says, no, you can't do that. Are you sure? No, absolutely not. You can't do that. Again, who says? And you can't do it because you couldn't control these things. Is that true? Does it in fact mean simply changing some habits, getting more disciplined, getting more motivated to find that indeed those things are inside your control? And once more, I think it's another example of the importance of friends and the friend group and who we associate with. It's very often, if you're a glass half empty people, to make sure you've got at least a few glass half full people around, because it's easy to consider that things can't be done. And if we're talking about leading ourselves to somewhere, then again I would suggest ensuring you can have a team around you who are possibility thinkers, who are people who are motivated, who are people who have achieved things. And if you can't find them physically there, then maybe you can chat to them online. But of course there are other things these days, aren't there? There are podcasts, there are videos, there's YouTube, and so on. And all those things can help us. And remember, the really old-fashioned one, which I quite like, books, reading. And yeah, one could argue what is environmentally safe. I would always tend to go for paper that had been recycled. But if you really read that book, and maybe you annotate it, and I like doing that, and bend over pages, it's something tangible, it's something physical. And if you use that a lot, and then you compare it to reading it somewhere online, you may find that in actual fact, it is greener, so to speak, to actually physically have a book. I tend to reserve the books that I have physically for certain things and just look other things up online, but there's quite a difference. And if you make that book your own, then I would say that it can work wonders. And I mean, sticking on post-it notes, annotating it, whatever. For some people, that's anathema. They won't touch the book. I appreciate it. It's just a preference of mine. Now, something else that can be done is to look at our habits on a day-to-day basis. Are the things that we're just ignoring? Have we decided not to tidy up? Should we be doing things around? Maybe it's connected to the vehicle that you drive. Does it need to be tidied? Does it need to be cleaned? Does the house need to be cleaned? And this brings me back to, I suppose, almost like a catchphrase, but I don't want to demean what the gentleman talks about. And this is Admiral McRaven, who is, I think he's retired, Navy, US Navy. And he talks about making your bed. In fact, I think he's got a book out called Make Your Bed. I think that's what it's called. Now, I haven't read the book, I'm very upfront about that. I have not read that one. I have read excerpts, I've listened to him talk, and it's very, very powerful stuff. I've read other people, and a lot of other people who have that experience, an impeccable track record, and or maybe psychologists, sports people, they talk about something similar. And one of the reasons that it's useful to, when you get up to make your bed, you're creating order in your room. And most of us need at least some element of order. If you wake up and it's chaos all around, what are you telling yourself? This is just how it is. And that's particularly debilitating if you like a bit of order. Some people, yeah, they love that chaos. I don't. I don't mind a bit of it, but I don't. And so if I'm in a chaotic environment, what is it saying to me? It's untidy. It needs cleaned. I have no control over this. This is getting on top of me. You see? It's essentially putting us into that place of external locus of control, lack of confidence, incompetence. And it may sound like a really simple thing. It may sound like, oh, surely no, an untidy room, a bed that needs made. Do that repetitively and stop doing things repetitively that help tidy, help clean, help make that bed. Do those things, clean that car. Then we lose discipline. We create an environment which tends to swamp us or feel like it's swamping us. And as I say, there are always exceptions. But that would be my advice. Look at your environment. How tidy, how ordered is it? And to take the Admiral's advice, make that bed and ensure that you create that list and go over it with someone. And then take those steps that will help you increase confidence. And of course, what is lying behind all that is that we need to set goals and we need to consider how best to do that and how best to take a little journey towards those goals. But that I'll talk about another time. For the moment, from me, bye for now.